That's wild. Well, cool. I'm looking forward to getting into your history and your work.
Yeah,
So let's begin the journey here with I know we're getting to a point where we're getting tired of talking about the COVID, the pandemic thing, but it was such a
sure.
big deal. So how did you survive that time period and how did it influence the way that you do things now?
Yeah, so it's really funny because honestly, COVID for a lot of people and for me and my family, it really kind of opened our eyes with, where we saw like spending our time, right? And I mean, I think that was, I didn't start Canyon Pickleball or really go down kind of the entrepreneurial path until really about a year and a half ago. But I think it was like being locked up and COVID and all of that. I think it really like just highlighted what was important, and I think to everyone. So yeah, I mean, we had COVID a few times, but it's one of those things where once we realized like what was important to us, we were like, okay, we need to start spending more time and energy on what really matters.
Yeah.
you know,
So let's get into the pickleball and your life as an entrepreneur. If I was to put you in front of a bunch of third grade students at career day and one of the kids was curious and wanted to know what you do every day, how would you answer them?
I would say my day is filled with a lot of different things. At this point, Canyon Pickleball is not my main job, but I do get to spend a lot of my day talking about pickleball. I get to show people what pickleball is like. I get to share my experience of like why pickleball is such an important thing in my life, how it got me out of some really dark times. And I get to go out and play a lot. My daughter, every time she's 2 years old, every time that I leave the house, she always says, "Dada, go play pickleball. Dada, go play pickleball." And so she has this really, I don't want to say like fantastical idea of my life, but she really like sees me having fun a lot in my days, and I
Yeah.
think that's really important because growing up, definitely I came from a pretty working class family, and there was a lot of seriousness and there was a lot of fun, but there was definitely a lot of serious times. So my daughter gets to see me just having fun a lot in my days, which is pretty unique.
What did you want to be when you were a kid? When you were in the third grade, what did you want to be when you grew up?
For me, it's really funny. I actually wanted to be a weatherman.
Cool, man.
I wanted to be a weatherman, and it's funny. I was on track to kind of go into meteorology. There was a weatherman when I was probably first to third grade, somewhere in that time frame. His name was Evan, and he was on the local news. And I would always get up in the morning, and I would watch him, and I would imitate him, and I was always very charismatic, and so I always felt like I could probably be a weatherman. And I ended up following that kind of passion a little bit more. And when I was about to go to college, I actually was looking at Oklahoma University, which has one of the best meteorology programs in the country. I ended up going, touring, didn't enjoy the campus, didn't like kind of the vibe of it, and kind of made a big switch and pivoted to what I knew most, which was business, which is where my dad came from. So really, really big switch. But yeah,
Wow. So
yeah.
take me back to your childhood where you were born and raised. What were some of the foundational elements of not only being an entrepreneur, but getting to the point where pickleball is such a big part of your life?
Yeah, yeah. So I was born and raised in Dallas, Texas. I grew up there. My family actually moved down there to Texas right before my daughter was. I mean, right before my sister was born from Pennsylvania, and so I grew up, in Dallas. Didn't really move around a lot. Moved one time and then kind of stayed put for the remainder of my childhood in the same home. So I was really fortunate to not have to move around a ton. But I grew up in a household that was I grew up in a very religious household. I've since kind of transitioned a little bit out of that same lifestyle, but I grew up in a very religious household. Going to church a lot. I actually grew up, and I still am a musician. I played in the church. My mom is a music teacher, so music was a really, really big piece of my life. But I would say music, and my dad's a drummer. My dad plays, and so for me, I think music was kind of the original catalyst to like creativity in my life. And it was kind of the original catalyst of, my dad, he worked in business, but he still played drums on the weekends in his bands. And my mom was a teacher and she taught music. And so, even though we were always kind of in this like hustle, mindset and, trying to work hard and all of that, music was always kind of the thing that I think was like the light in creativity in our lives. So I really carried that throughout my whole life. And so, I think that looking back is probably one of the biggest pieces of why I was able to start to foster this idea of entrepreneurship and this idea of moving into more creative roles was because of my passion still to this day for music. Um, Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, do you ever wonder what it would have been like if you had a good experience on that campus and you would have went towards meteorology? Does that ever go into your brain?
I think about that all the time. And, honestly, it's one of those things where that really just going on that campus and realizing that it wasn't for me,
Yeah.
wasn't really necessarily a knock for the school, but that to me is really one of the first instincts or first instances in my life where I really trusted my gut. And that same principle and that same mindset has continued to grow in everything I do in my life, what I do with my wife and how we make decisions and with our daughter and with business. And so I've just really been trying to lean more into that gut instinct, that gut feeling of this is the right decision right now. This is the right thing that we should be doing. But yeah, I think about that all the time. And there is still a part of me that wishes I was a weatherman, let's be honest.
But they have fantasy camp kind of things where at some point maybe that could become a reality where you could do
Yeah.
something like that just to get in front of the screen. It's interesting. I got into sports broadcasting and I went to the University of Missouri St. Louis. And as I
Mm,
was approaching the end of my second year, you're usually at that 60 credit point. I was going to go to the University of Missouri Columbia, and they have one of the best journalism schools in the
mm,
country. And when I went
mm.
down there, they weren't going to take any of my credits. Like I was going to have to redo all these classes. And I'm like, you guys are in the same system. I mean, if I came from a different like system, I get it. So it's weird when you say that because that would have been a big turning point for me, I think. But it was like, no, I can't do it. So I kind of
Yeah.
pivoted and had to figure things out. So it's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Super interesting.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. I I just turned 52. My wife kind of threw like an impromptu gathering, and there's a place in Kansas City in the metro called Chicken and Pickle. And it's a big,
Mhm.
huge, are you familiar with them?
I'm familiar with them. I haven't been to one, but I'm super familiar with them. Yeah.
Okay. Just this big fantasy land of all kinds of stuff going on. But pickleball is obviously the backdrop. So we get
Sure.
there and it's awesome. And at one point, my wife said, when did pickleball become the thing? Like what is it
Mhm.
about pickleball? Because it's kind of like it's a different version, obviously, of tennis. And I'm like, well, it seems to me as though there's shorter distances, it's a little bit more compact. It's like what they've done with baseball and sports. They've just
Mhm.
expedited. They've kind of made everything more action-packed. So from your estimation as a pickleball aficionado, explain to me how pickleball, the word and all of it came about and why it's so popular.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. I would say this is probably the topic that I get asked a lot. I've been playing pickleball. I've been in the pickleball space for about 2.5 years now at this point. And really, what I believe is what has drawn so many people to it, and the reason why we have now. I just saw the stat. I can't give the exact one, but it was basically that there's more amateur pickleball players now than there are amateur tennis players in this
Wow.
country, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And what I think is what people have been drawn to the most. It really comes down to a few things. One of them being is the equipment. Equipment is super affordable to get into, right?
Yeah.
Tennis rackets, you usually feel a little intimidated buying one because you feel like you have to be really good to buy one. Golf, same thing, right? Racquetball, kind of same thing. You're a little intimidated by the equipment. A pickleball paddle is very simple. You can see one behind me. It's very small. It feels very
Yeah.
non-threatening. What I would say number two is it's so easy to pick up. I like to say it's. Are you a skier?
No, I've never skied.
Okay, so skiing and snowboarding, there's two very big differences.
Yeah.
Skiing, you can get very good very fast, but it's very hard to master.
Yeah.
Snowboarding, it takes a while to get good, but then it's very easy to master. Pickleball is like skiing. You can pick it up day one and start to feel really, really good about your game and start to feel like, wow, I've never really played a sport before, but this is actually not that hard. And it's less intimidating than even table tennis because table tennis, you got to have very fast coordination right off the get go,
Yeah.
right? You can be missing the ball with this tiny little paddle. But pickleball, it's a wiffle ball and you have a pretty decent sized court. So just hitting the ball over the net, even just getting better at that. So it's a very approachable game. And the third thing I would say is because, and I'll get into just briefly like the history of pickleball, because it is a combination of multiple sports, it really is this like I like to say it's kind of like the great equalizer of sport, right?
Yeah.
No other sport in existence that I can think of can have a 10-year-old on the court with an 85-year-old woman and an army veteran. Every single combination
Yep,
of person in the world on the same court, and it's a fair, equal game.
totally.
That is wild to me. So I would say those three things are the biggest.
So who's the best pickleballer out there? Like who is on the top echelon of the sport?
Yeah, so Ben Johns has always been kind of considered the number one pickleball player. Tyson McGuffin, another name, has always been on there. He's called the bad boy of pickleball, which is always kind of a funny nickname. But now it's really interesting because Ben Johns, he's not even that old. I want to say he's 24, 25. But we are now at the point where pickleball has just grown so much and people are able to get really good really quickly. So we have, colleges are now creating their own clubs, and they
Yeah,
just had here in Daytona, in Florida, they just had this big collegiate basically tournament where schools from about 19 different schools came together. So it is now becoming this like really, really like elaborate system for funneling players into the pro level. And I would say too, what's really interesting now is that other countries are starting to come involved. Right, Puerto
yeah.
Rico is becoming very big. Canada is becoming very big. Australia just opened up their league. So I think we're just at honestly, we're not even at the tipping point. I mean, we are still climbing that. So
Yeah. Interesting. Who's been a hero for you? Who's been an inspiration for you in your life?
it's a great question. I would say I'll give you two answers. I'll give you the one that I would say is probably like one of the most important is my dad. I mean, my dad's work ethic, my dad's um, creativity, and I would say again his balance of being able to kind of go down the path of providing for us through business. But I mean, it was never what he really wanted to do. Right? I mean, he's a drummer at heart. He still plays so much today, and he always like kept that up. And I think that's as now with a 2-year old, I have learned. I don't have them up right now, but I have three guitars that are normally behind me, and it is very hard to play when I have a toddler running around. So my dad has always been an inspiration to me for a lot of ways. So I would say he is one of my heroes, and then my second hero, I would probably say, um, honestly, I'd probably have to go with probably Barack Obama, if I'm
Yeah,
honest. I mean, I
yeah.
think just his whole demeanor and the way that he is able to connect with people has always been something that I've always admired. I like to feel like I am a great connector, and I can really empathize with people. And so, hearing him over the last 20 years of him kind of being in the ether has always been really inspiring to me.
I have missed him so
Hmm.
badly, being in charge and being a leader. It's just it's
I
crazy.
know.
So let me ask you this. You may have already answered it. If you could meet one person alive on the planet that might help you in your entrepreneurial journey and just in general that would inspire you, that you find fascinating, who would that one person be?
Alive.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, I'm gonna go, and maybe you know him. I'm gonna go either Guy Raz
Yeah.
or I'm gonna go Malcolm Gladwell.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Great people,
I
dude.
I would probably say Malcolm Gladwell, just because he's such an interesting person, and I think in his podcast and his books, I've read most of his books now. He always brings just this level of curiosity, which is again, honestly, the reason going back to meteorology. It's the reason I wanted to become a weatherman was
Yeah.
because I was really curious to how things worked. I was always wondering. I always asked a lot of questions, and Malcolm Gladwell has always done that in his interviews and his books, and he's just very curious about the world around him and why people do what they do. And so I think honestly, it's why I've become an entrepreneur. Is I'm just curious to how to build things, how to make things work, how to solve problems, and yeah, I've just always looked up to him.
I always think about free economics. There's so many pieces of that. Like when they were talking about just little things like, how in the 90s we started balancing the budget and things didn't get out of
Yep,
hand, and how all of those tidal waves ended up becoming kind of a momentous piece of that decade.
sure,
Yeah, it's amazing, you know.
yeah,
Um, so let me ask you this. The thing about pickleball is that I see it as kind of this wave that's cresting and it's just continuing to mount and mount and mount. And as much as it's been established, it's still this thing that's developing, like you said, with these collegiate teams and all of this that's going on. So my question to you is this: what is your motivation every day to be in this industry, to be an entrepreneur, to do all of these things, and to also evolve as a human yourself? What is that collective gas for you?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'd be lying if I didn't say some days are harder than others, as it is for most people. But what I will say, and I'm not sure if you have kids, but it is, I would say when we had our daughter, which was about 2 years ago now, her birthday is this month in a couple weeks. Um, when we had our daughter, it's really what created this shift. And when I was pretty much planning for her to arrive, I knew that I was going down a path that just wasn't suitable for me. I was in a normal 9 to 5. I'd been that way for about 10 years. I was in the normal corporate structure, and I was always tired. I was always exhausted. I was always kind of just, a little bit on edge. I never really felt great. And, even with therapy and everything else combined, exercise, it still was not helping. And I knew I needed to make a shift. And when I came back from paternity leave, I tried to make it work, and it still didn't. And so I pretty much made a clear cut and left the corporate world. And I started freelancing and started kind of experimenting with the ideas of what I could do past that, point of the normal corporate structure. So for me, the gas I would say is my daughter. It's being around for her. It's being around for my wife and being a better partner. Again, some days it's easier than others, but honestly, that is probably the biggest gas. Now, pickleball, what I would say is the reason that I continue to do this and the reason I continue to want to build this brand is it got me out of a really dark time. When I moved from Colorado to Florida 2.5 years ago. I didn't know anyone. I knew probably two people, and it was very, very hard. And I came from a sports background. I was always playing. When I was in Colorado, we had like football teams, we had all these other stuff, and I knew I could find that in Orlando, but it would take some time to really build up those connections. But right before I left Colorado, a buddy taught me how to play pickleball. And I said, you know what? Let's just go try it. I'm just going to show up to a court. Let's just see what it's like. And it was intimidating. It was scary. I kept going up, kept showing up, kept coming back. And quickly I started to build friendships and connections. And again, meeting, all these different people. I mean, the amount of people that are in my phone now that is first name John, last name Pickleball. I have probably over 30. Well, I don't even know their life, their story, their background, but they are my pickleball friend. We go, we hang out, we play pickleball, and then I leave and we go back to our lives. It got me out of such a dark time. So building this brand is really important to me because I want people to feel that same way. I want people to be able to feel connected to something, feel connected to their community. If you're in a dark space, it can get your body moving and can get your mind active. So for me, it's really personal.
So if you had a dream tonight, ran into the 18-year-old version of you before all these dreams took hold, and you could give that version of you a piece of advice based on this life you've led, the wisdom you've accumulated over time, what advice would you impart?
It's a great question. I would say one of the biggest pieces is be patient. I would say I was not a very patient kid. I still to this day struggle with that, but I would say I was not a very patient kid. My mind was always running, a mile every second, and it was really hard to be patient. It was really hard to be patient for not only like just like the physical world evolving around me, but like mentally, in my relationships, in what I wanted to accomplish, things that I was thinking about. I wasn't very patient, so I would say be patient. And then the second thing would be to try to wait to worry. And I forget who was there was someone I just listened to on a podcast that was talking about the whole idea of wait to worry. And I was a little bit of a worrier, I think, because of being impatient in life. And the idea of wait to worry really, really has just stuck with me.
Yeah.
Especially when you've got kids or you've got this going on, you have the business, and it's like what? There's a lot of things that can go wrong any given day. I could go drive in a car and get hit by a bus today, but again, I need to wait to worry. Right? There's nothing
Yeah.
I can do about any of those things right now.
That is so important. So, of all of these things that you've done and evolved into at this point in your life, what are you the proudest of?
Professionally or personally?
Both.
Okay. Professionally, I would say um, leaving the corporate sector. I would say that, and to this day, is still very hard. I had a very stable, well-paying job. I can go back at any given point, and it's really hard I'm very, very privileged to be able to have a little bit of a golden ticket where I can go back into a corporate job if I wanted to make great money and kind of cash a check. That was a very hard mentality to shift from. It's something I talk about on my LinkedIn. I talk about it throughout Canyon a lot. This shift into leaving what for 10 years. And it's a shift that my dad to this day has said, over and over again. He's been, working in business for 40 years. And he has said, I wish I could have done that. I wish I could have left. But again, he did the best with what he could. And I love him for that. But he to this day still says that. And so I, I'm so, so proud of myself. I'm proud to have a partner and a family who's supportive in that journey and supportive with that, because I know not everyone has that. So I'm super, super proud of that. Now, personally, I would say being more vulnerable is something that I've been working on over the last probably 5 or 6 years. I love Brene Brown. I love everything that she's done for, kind of the community within spreading the idea of vulnerability. And especially as a man, I think being vulnerable is something that we're really just not taught a lot growing up. At least I wasn't, and it's something I've had to learn a lot. So being more vulnerable is something I'm really proud of. It's helped me in my relationship with my partner, with my daughter, with my best friends, really just anyone I come in contact with.
So, Evan, at the end of the day, everyone out there has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, everyone that you work with, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Um, I think that I am. These are great questions. These are really great questions. Um, I think that I am. I know that I am a very positive person, but I would say I am a very um, trusting person. Um, I would say that I am very driven. I don't like the word goal oriented because I think sometimes there's a little woo stuff with goals in some ways, but I would say I'm just very driven. And at the end of the day, I would say what defines my character the most is uh, just wanting to try anything. Just try anything in life. I want to, I always want to just try something and see how it goes and learn from it. And I think you have to have that mindset to be good in business. You have to have that mindset to be a great parent, because you just have to try things out, right?
Yep.
No one has a manual for anything in life, so you just have to try it.
Yeah.
So I would say those characteristics.
So, Evan, if anyone wants to reach out, get involved, learn more about you, any of the good business, where do they go?
Yeah, sure. So you can go to canyonpickleball.com to learn more about our brand. You can go on Instagram at Canyon Pickleball. Very simple to look up. If you want to learn more about me, you can follow me on LinkedIn. I'm always posting, things about my journey, leaving the corporate world, building Canyon. I'm actually also getting into investing in self storage, which is something we didn't actually chat about. So I'm really just pursuing a lot of different ideas, a lot of entrepreneurial, spirit. So if you like that kind of stuff, give me a follow. Would love to be able to connect with you.
Right on. Evan, thank you, sir. Thank you for your story. Thank you for your time. Continued success.
Joe, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you pronounce your last name correctly?
Kuterbach.
I want to make sure because that you can
Yeah.
be,
Yep.
the
Yep. Yep. Yeah. I
I
think it actually used to have like, and this is, back when my great grandparents were in Germany. I think it used to have an umlaut
uh-huh.
above the U.
Yeah.
Then it got removed at some point during, time.
Yeah.
So.
And my name's full of vowels, so it can go one way or another. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's full of vowels.
It's crazy. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Send my love to Orlando, man.
Yeah, Joe, this is great. Thank you so much,
Yeah,
man.
absolutely. My pleasure. Take care.